She was known in her small town as a quiet girl who rarely spoke unless spoken to, and even then her voice stayed low and careful as if she did not want to disturb the air around her. Her name was Anna, and she lived with her mother in a modest apartment above an old bookstore that smelled of paper dust and time. The building stood near the edge of town where the streets grew quieter, and the nights felt longer. Anna grew up surrounded by books and silence, and music was the one thing that filled that silence, without making it feel heavy. Her mother worked long hours at a local clinic and came home tired most evenings. But she always listened when Anna played the piano. The piano was old and upright with chipped wood and keys that were slightly yellow from age. It had belonged to Anna's father, who passed away when she was very young, and though she barely remembered his face, she remembered the sound of his playing. That memory stayed with her like a warm echo, and it was the reason she first touched the keys. Anna learned to play mostly on her own. She read sheet music from borrowed books and practiced after school when the bookstore downstairs closed and the world outside softened into evening. She was not trained in a formal way and never thought of herself as talented. She simply played because it felt like speaking in a language she understood better than words. At school, she was invisible to most people. Teachers described her as polite and focused, but quiet students passed by her desk without much notice. She did not mind this, allowed her to live in her inner world where melodies formed naturally and emotions settled into sound. She never imagined herself on a stage, and the idea of performing for others felt distant and unreal. Everything began to change when her music teacher noticed something different one afternoon during a routine class assignment. The teacher asked students to play a simple tune from the textbook. It was nothing special, just a basic melody meant to test timing and accuracy. When it was Anna's turn, she walked to the piano with steady steps and placed her fingers on the keys. The room was noisy at first, with chairs shifting and whispers passing. But as she began to play, something shifted. She followed the notes as written, but added something that could not be taught. The melody flowed gently and carried a warmth that surprised the room. The teacher looked up and listened more closely. Students stopped whispering and watched her hands move with calm confidence. When the last note faded, the room remained quiet for a moment longer than usual. The teacher thanked her and moved on, but the look in the teacher's eyes stayed thoughtful. Later that day, the teacher approached Anna and asked her where she learned to play. Anna answered simply that she learned at home. The teacher nodded and said nothing more, but a seed had been planted. Weeks passed and the school announced a regional music showcase. It was a formal event held in a large concert hall in the nearby city. Students from different schools would perform and judges would attend. It was meant to celebrate young musicians and encourage talent. The teacher suggested that Anna participate. Anna felt a sudden tightness in her chest. She had never played outside her home or classroom, and the thought of a large audience filled her with doubt. She tried to refuse gently, but the teacher insisted and explained that she would only need to play a simple tune, nothing complicated, nothing dramatic, just something short and clean. Anna agreed reluctantly, believing that a simple piece would allow her to hide within the notes. As the day of the event approached, Anna practiced every evening. Her mother noticed the change and asked questions. Anna explained quietly, and her mother listened with pride and concern. She reminded Anna that playing music was about honesty, not perfection, and that she should play the way she felt, not the way she thought others expected. The concert hall was larger than anything Anna had ever seen. The ceiling rose high above with lights glowing softly, and rows of seats stretched far back into shadows. The stage felt vast and exposed. When Anna walked onto it, her heart beat loudly in her ears. The piano at center stage was grand and polished, its surface reflecting the lights above. A staff member guided her to the bench and reminded her of the piece. She was expected to play a simple tune, one that many students before her had performed. The judges sat quietly with papers in hand. The audience murmured softly, waiting. Anna placed her hands on the keys and took a slow breath. She thought of her father and the old piano and the evenings spent alone with sound. She began to play the tune as written, at first simple and clean. Each note rang clearly through the hall. But as she continued, something inside her shifted. The hall disappeared, and she was no longer aware of the audience or judges. She felt the music rather than thought about it. Her hands moved with instinct, adding depth and emotion that had never been planned. The simple tune began to grow, not louder but fuller, carrying feeling that filled the space. The sound traveled through the hall and reached people in ways they did not expect. The audience leaned forward. The judges stopped writing. Anna remained unaware, completely present in the music, letting it guide her rather than controlling it. This was only the beginning of what would become a moment no one in that room would forget. As the final notes of the tune faded into the high space of the hall, Anna's hands remained still above the keys for a brief moment. She did not know why she paused. She only knew that the silence felt important, as if the room itself was holding its breath. When she finally lowered her hands and looked up, she saw faces turn toward her with expressions she had never seen before. Some looked surprised, others thoughtful, and a few seemed deeply moved. The applause did not come immediately. At first there was a quiet hesitation, and then one person began to clap, followed by another, and then many more. The sound grew quickly and filled the hall with a force that startled her. It was not polite applause or routine appreciation. It was strong and sincere. and seemed to come from a place of shared feeling. Anna stood slowly, unsure of what to do next. Her legs felt weak, and her hands trembled slightly. She bowed the way she had seen others do, and walked off the stage, guided again by the staff member who now looked at her with new respect. Backstage, she leaned against a wall and tried to understand what had just happened. She had only played a basic tune, yet it felt as though something much larger had passed through her. Her teacher found her moments later with eyes shining and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. She did not speak at first, and then said simply that what Anna had done could not be taught. Anna did not respond. She was still caught in the echo of the music and the unexpected reaction. When she returned home that evening, her mother was waiting anxiously. Anna told her everything in a soft voice, trying not to exaggerate the applause, the silence before it, the feeling of being somewhere else while playing. Her mother listened closely and smiled with a mix of pride and emotion. She said that sometimes people spend their whole lives looking for a way to speak truthfully, and that Anna had found hers through music. In the days that followed, word of the performance spread beyond the school. A short recording taken by someone in the audience appeared online and began to circulate among music teachers and students. It was not professionally filmed, and the sound quality was imperfect, yet something about the performance reached people anyway. Comments spoke of honesty and feeling rather than technique. Anna felt uncomfortable with the attention. She did not know how to respond to messages or praise. She continued going to school, sitting in the same seat, and walking the same hallways, yet something inside her had changed. She listened differently now. When she played at home, she allowed the music to move freely without fear of judgment. Her teacher encouraged her to continue performing and suggested formal training. Anna felt torn. She loved the simplicity of playing for herself, but could not deny the connection she had felt on stage. She began to understand that music was not only a private language but a shared one. This realization stayed with her quietly, growing stronger with each day, and it marked the true beginning of a path she had never planned to walk, but could no longer ignore. As weeks turned into months, Anna life settled into a new rhythm that felt both familiar and unfamiliar at the same time. She still lived above the bookstore, still practiced on the old upright piano, and still walked the same quiet streets, yet there was a growing awareness inside her that the world had opened slightly wider than before. People who once passed her without notice now greeted her with curiosity or quiet admiration. She accepted it politely, but never fully comfortably. Opportunities began to appear slowly and carefully. A local cultural center invited her to play at a small evening event. Nothing formal, nothing competitive, just a short performance for a mixed audience. Anna hesitated at first, but remembered the feeling of connection she had experienced on the larger stage. She agreed under the condition that she could choose what to play. On the night of the event, the room was smaller and warmer, with chairs arranged closely together. The audience was made up of families, students, and older couples who attended out of simple interest. Anna felt calmer here. She sat at the piano and played pieces that were meaningful to her. Some were simple melodies, others more layered, but all were played with the same honesty. The response was gentle but deep, and she felt a sense of peace she had not expected. Her mother attended and watched from the back of the room. Seeing her daughter play with such openness stirred memories of her husband and the quiet joy music once brought into their home. Afterward, she hugged Anna tightly and said that no matter where music took her, she should never lose the part of herself that played without trying to impress. At school, Anna began receiving guidance from a visiting piano instructor who recognized her natural sensitivity. The lessons focused not on strict perfection, but on listening and expression. Anna learned new techniques yet remained grounded in her instinctual approach. She began to understand that discipline and freedom could exist together. One afternoon, after a long practice session, she realized that she no longer feared the piano or the stage. She respected them, but did not feel intimidated. Music had become not a challenge to overcome, but a place to return to. This growing confidence did not make her louder or more outgoing, but it gave her a steady presence. People sensed it when she played, and even when she was silent, it was as if the thunderous applause from that first performance had not pushed her forward, but had instead given her permission to stand where she already was. And quietly, without grand announcements, Anna continued forward, guided not by ambition, but by a deep and steady love for the sound that had always understood her. As time moved on, Anna found herself balancing between the ordinary world she had always known and the growing presence of music in her life. She still helped her mother with small chores and still stopped by the bookstore downstairs where the owner let her borrow books without question, yet there were now afternoons filled with focused practice. Evenings spent listening to recordings suggested by her instructor. Each new piece opened another way of understanding how emotion could live inside sound. One invitation led to another. She was asked to play at a charity gathering, then at a small regional recital. None of these events were grand, but each one placed her in front of new listeners. Each time she sat at the piano, she felt the same quiet moment before playing where the outside world softened and her inner world came forward. She learned to trust that moment and not rush past it. There were challenges as well. Some audiences expected technical brilliance and flashy performance. Anna felt those expectations, but chose not to chase them. Instead, she stayed true to the style that felt honest to her. There were moments of doubt, especially when she compared herself to others who had years of formal training and confident stage presence. Yet whenever she played with sincerity, the response reminded her why she began. Her instructor spoke to her one afternoon about the possibility of applying to a conservatory in the future. The idea felt distant and overwhelming. Anna had never imagined leaving her town or her familiar routines, but the thought stayed with her quietly, not as pressure, but as possibility. At home, her mother noticed how music had become a steady center rather than a distraction. Their conversations deepened, and they spoke openly about fear, change, and hope. Her mother shared stories about Anna's father, and how he too had struggled between responsibility and passion. These stories helped Anna feel connected to something larger than her own journey. One evening, Anna returned to the concert hall where it had all begun. This time, the hall was empty and quiet. She sat at the same grand piano and played softly, letting the sound rise into the space without effort. She realized then that the applause she had received was not the goal, but a reflection of something real she had shared. With that understanding, she stepped forward into the next chapter of her life, not rushing, and not hiding, simply listening, and allowing the music to lead her where it needed to go. The following months tested Anna in quiet but meaningful ways. As her name became more familiar in local music circles, expectations slowly changed. People no longer asked her to simply play, they asked what she would play. And that small difference carried weight. She felt the responsibility of choice and sometimes missed the simplicity of being told exactly what to do, yet she understood that this was part of growth. She began keeping a small notebook where she wrote thoughts after each performance, not reviews or technical notes, but feelings. She wrote about moments when the room felt close and moments when it felt distant. She noticed patterns and learned that her best performances came when she remained emotionally present rather than technically focused. This awareness helped her shape her practice in a more thoughtful way. At school, she was invited to mentor a younger student who had just begun learning piano. Sitting beside the child, Anna saw her younger self in the hesitant hands and uncertain posture. She guided gently, never correcting too sharply, and encouraged listening. Above all, the experience deepened her understanding of music as something passed between people rather than mastered alone. There were days when exhaustion crept in. Balancing school, family, and music left little time for rest. On those days, she questioned whether continuing was wise. Her mother noticed and reminded her that pauses were allowed, and that silence was also part of music. Anna listened and learned to step back when needed, trusting that the sound would wait for her. One afternoon, a letter arrived from a regional arts program offering her a place in a summer workshop. It was the first opportunity that would take her away from home for an extended time. The decision felt heavy. She spent nights thinking and days playing through her uncertainty. Eventually, she realized that fear and curiosity were walking together, and that she did not need to silence either. With quiet resolve, she accepted the offer, not knowing exactly what awaited her, only knowing that the path that began with a basic tune was still unfolding, and that each step forward honored the moment. She first allowed herself to be heard. The summer workshop brought Anna into a new environment filled with unfamiliar faces and constant sound. She arrived carrying a small suitcase and a quiet determination. The building was old but full of life, with practice rooms echoing music from early morning until late evening. Students came from many places and carried different levels of confidence. Some spoke openly about their goals, while others kept to themselves. Anna found a place in between, observing more than speaking. The days were structured with lessons, group sessions, and individual practice. At first, Anna felt small among so many skilled players. Some moved through complex pieces with ease and spoke confidently about technique. She listened carefully and reminded herself why she was there, not to compete, but to learn and to listen. Her instructors noticed her sensitivity. Early, they encouraged her to explore phrasing and touch, rather than speed or volume. In one session, she was asked to play a very simple melody again, much like the one that began her journey. This time, she played it slowly, letting each note breathe. The room grew still, and the instructor nodded quietly. Anna felt a familiar warmth spread through her chest. Outside of lessons, she spent time walking alone around the grounds, letting her thoughts settle. She missed home and her mother, but also felt a growing independence. She was learning how to carry her inner world with her wherever she went. Toward the end of the workshop, there was a small informal performance night. Students were free to play whatever they wished. Anna chose a piece that blended simplicity with depth. When she finished, there was no loud reaction, only a deep, attentive silence followed by sincere appreciation. In that moment, she understood that connection did not always need thunder to be real. When the workshop ended, Anna returned home changed in ways that were not immediately visible. She brought back new skills, new understanding, and a clearer sense of self. The path ahead was still uncertain, but it no longer felt intimidating. It felt open and honest and ready to be walked with patience and care. After returning home, Anna noticed that familiar places felt slightly different, not because they had changed, but because she had. The apartment above the bookstore felt smaller yet warmer, and the old piano carried a deeper meaning than before. She touched the keys with gratitude and played softly, letting the sound settle into the room. Her mother listened from the kitchen and sensed the quiet growth in her daughter without needing words. School resumed and life returned to routine, but Anna carried a new calm within her. She was no longer unsure of why she played or what music meant to her. She did not rush to perform or seek attention. When invitations came, she chose, carefully guided by feeling rather than opportunity. Each performance became an act of sharing rather than proving. Her relationship with her teacher evolved into one of mutual respect. Conversations shifted from instruction to reflection. They spoke about balance, patience, and the importance of staying grounded. Anna listened closely and applied these lessons not only to music but to daily life. There were moments when doubt still appeared, especially when thinking about the future. Questions about career stability and direction surfaced quietly, yet she no longer feared these questions. She understood that uncertainty was not failure, but part of an honest path. One evening, a small community concert was held at the local hall. Anna agreed to play. The audience was modest and familiar as she sat at the piano. She felt the same stillness she had felt at the very beginning. She played a simple tune and allowed it to grow naturally. When she finished, the applause was warm and heartfelt, and she smiled knowing she had stayed true to herself. That night she walked home under a calm sky, feeling grounded and present. The journey that began with a simple request had shaped her in ways applause alone never could, and she felt ready for whatever came next without needing to force it or fear it. In the years that followed, Anna's life continued to unfold in a steady and honest way. Music remained at the center, but it no longer defined her worth. It became a companion rather than a test. She continued her studies with care, choosing paths that allowed both growth and balance. She did not chase fame and she did not hide from opportunity. She simply listened and responded when something felt right. Her mother watched this journey with quiet pride. The bond between them deepened through shared understanding and unspoken support. They spoke often about her father and the way music had once filled their home. In those conversations, Anna felt a sense of continuity, as if her playing carried not only her own voice, but echoes of love and memory. Anna eventually performed on many stages, some larger, some smaller. Each time she returned to the same inner place that had guided her from the beginning. She remembered the day she was told to play a basic tune, and how that simple request opened a door she did not know existed. She understood now that the applause was never about volume or surprise. It was about recognition of something real. People who heard her play often described feeling seen or understood, though they could not explain why. Anna accepted those words with humility. She knew that what moved them was not perfection, but presence, the willingness to be honest through sound. As time passed, she also found joy in teaching. Sharing music with others became another form of expression. She encouraged students to listen deeply and trust their instincts, just as she had learned to do. She reminded them that even the simplest melody could hold great meaning when played with truth. Looking back, Anna did not see a dramatic transformation or a sudden rise. She saw a series of small choices made with care, each one guided by feeling rather than fear. The room filled with thunderous applause had been a moment, but the quiet moments that followed shaped her life. And so her story did not end with applause or recognition. It continued in everyday acts of listening, playing, and sharing. A life shaped by music, not as a performance, but as a way of being present in the world. Being present in the world.